The Veyran flagship hung above the silent void like a predator watching its prey. Its obsidian hull absorbed the light of distant stars, an ominous shadow against the endless black. Inside its command chamber, General Kael'thar stood at the center of a vast ring of holographic screens. His form was imposing even among his own kind, a towering figure with ridged silver skin, crimson eyes, and a presence that radiated authority born of centuries of conquest. Before him floated the projection of a world bathed in blue and green. The human homeworld, Earth. Kael'thar's mandibles tightened in faint distaste. He had read the reports. A fragile species of soft flesh and brittle bones. A people who broke easily and lived briefly. Their biology lacked natural armor. Their weapons were primitive compared to Veyran technology, and their history was cluttered with endless infighting. "They are weak," Kael'thar said, his voice like stone grinding against stone. Around him, his council of officers inclined their heads. None dared question the general's judgment. A species without discipline, without resilience. Their world is dangerous, yes, but they are not suited to master it. They are temporary. A few of his officers shifted uneasily. Whispers had circulated through the lower ranks. Reports buried in scout files and travelogues. Stories of humans climbing mountains without breathers, crossing deserts with no water for days, swimming in freezing oceans, or surviving wounds that should have ended their lives. There were even tales of human settlements on worlds long classified as deathworlds, planets so violent in their natural design that even the hardy Veyran avoided them. But no officer was bold enough to raise such rumors in front of Kael'thar. The general turned his gaze back to the hologram. Earth revolved slowly, oblivious to the alien eyes studying it. "We will conquer them quickly. A single campaign. Their defenses will crumble, their cities will burn, and their submission will be total." It was spoken as fact, not prediction. The council bowed their assent. But Kael'thar's certainty would not survive long. The first seeds of doubt arrived not on Earth, but on the colony world Beta-13. This planet was infamous across the Veyran archives. Its atmosphere seethed with chemical storms, its surface was raked by constant tectonic shifts, and its wildlife was as brutal as the storms themselves. The Veyrans had once attempted to establish an outpost there, only to lose it within weeks to the merciless environment. The planet was stamped with a designation in their records, uninhabitable, deathworld, and yet the humans had colonized it. Kael'thar watched the live feed as his observation craft transmitted images from orbit. Expecting to see armored settlements or fortified domes, he instead found something that unsettled him in its simplicity. A small town stood against the wind, its structures built from hardened composites and steel, weathered but standing firm. Green fields spread beyond it, astonishingly alive despite the violent climate. And in the middle of this unlikely refuge, he saw children. They ran across jagged stone plains, their small feet nimble even as shards of rock cut at their skin. They laughed as the winds whipped around them, chasing each other beneath skies lit by lightning. One group dangled from the branches of a tree whose bark dripped with acid sap, yet they knew instinctively how to avoid its sting. Another group climbed a cliff face fractured by quakes, their hands clinging with startling confidence. Their voices carried with laughter, unbothered by the danger surrounding them. Kael'thar narrowed his eyes. The image did not make sense. These were not soldiers. They were not hardened survivors with decades of training. They were children, beings at their most vulnerable stage, and yet they thrived where even the Veyrans had failed. The officers around him murmured uneasily. One finally found the courage to speak. "General, they are not as fragile as our reports claimed." Kael'thar silenced him with a glare, but even he felt the weight of what he had seen. He studied one particular child, a girl no older than 8. She tumbled down a slope, scraping her knees against the jagged rock. For a moment, she sat there, her face twisted in pain. Kael'thar almost expected her to cry for help, to be carried back to the settlement. But she did not. She pressed her small hands against the wound, stemmed the bleeding, and rose again. Within seconds, she was laughing and chasing her companions, as though nothing had happened. The general's mandibles twitched. This resilience was not learned through training. It was ingrained. The following days only deepened the puzzle. The scouts transmitted more recordings. Humans swimming in turbulent seas, building homes along cliff edges that trembled with quakes, and harvesting food from flora that should have been poisonous. And always, their children were at the center, laughing, playing, and learning in environments that should have killed them. Kael'thar watched in silence each time, his previous certainty eroding. Perhaps their flesh was soft, but their spirits were unyielding. Perhaps their short lives only sharpened their will to endure. The more he watched, the more the word weak seemed like a lie he had told himself. Still, pride was a formidable armor. When his officers looked to him for guidance, he raised his head high. Do not mistake recklessness for strength. Their defiance is instinct, not discipline. Instinct can be broken. His tone carried conviction, but in the private chambers of his mind, a whisper of doubt had taken root. That whisper grew louder when Kael'thar finally set foot on Earth itself. The Veyran fleet descended in shadow, blotting out the stars as their ships entered the human atmosphere. Earth's military scrambled to respond, their missiles and aircraft rising like sparks against the storm. Kael'thar dismissed them with contempt. The Veyran technology was centuries ahead, their shields shrugging off primitive weapons with ease. Yet even as the humans fought and lost, there was no surrender. Every city resisted. Every soldier fought until the last breath. And in their streets, among rubble and fire, children did not cower in silence. They ran messages through danger, carried water to soldiers, and pulled each other from collapsing buildings. Kael'thar marched through a conquered district one evening, flanked by his guards. The air was thick with smoke, and the ground was littered with debris. From the shadows, he heard laughter. He signaled his soldiers to halt, his crimson eyes narrowing. There, in the ruins of a shattered building, a group of children played. Their ball was a dented piece of metal, their field a crater carved by bombardment, and yet their joy was unbroken. One boy, no older than 10, kicked the metal sphere with surprising force. It bounced off a wall and rolled near Kael'thar's feet. The alien general bent down and picked it up, studying its battered surface. The children froze, their eyes wide as they stared at the towering figure. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Kael'thar sent the ball rolling back to them. The children hesitated, then one of them darted forward, snatched it up, and laughed again. Soon the game resumed, as though the presence of a galactic conqueror meant nothing at all. Kael'thar turned away, but something inside him shifted. In that laughter, he heard something more dangerous than any weapon, a refusal to be broken. He had seen empires kneel, seen armies surrender under the weight of fear. But these children, these fragile creatures, did not know how to yield. That night, alone in his chamber, Kael'thar stared at the stars beyond the viewport. His thoughts circled endlessly. Perhaps humans were not the weaklings he had believed. Perhaps their strength lay not in their bodies, but in their will to endure, to adapt, to rise again after every fall. And perhaps that made them the most dangerous species he had ever faced. Kael'thar could not sleep. The hum of the flagship's core, usually a comfort, gnawed at him like an unanswered question. He had seen countless conquests, subjugated countless civilizations, but this was the first time something had unsettled him. It was not human armies, not their weapons, not even their stubborn resistance on the battlefield. It was their children, fragile things that should have broken under the first sign of suffering. Yet instead they thrived in ruin, laughed in danger, and turned scars into games. The more he thought about them, the more memories surfaced from the campaigns. A human settlement burned, its defenses shattered. His troops reported that they had expected the survivors to cower. Instead, a group of children had organized the evacuation routes, guiding their elders through collapsed streets. In another city, as Veyran soldiers advanced, children hurled stones and shouted insults, slowing the march with reckless bravery. And then there was the boy with the makeshift ball, whose laughter still echoed in Kael'thar's mind like a wound that refused to heal. Pride urged him to dismiss these thoughts. Yet pride cracked when weighed against evidence. Humanity was not what he had believed. The invasion stretched on longer than Kael'thar had predicted. Every victory cost more than expected, not because of superior weapons but because of human resilience. They refused to surrender even when cities fell. Guerrilla fighters emerged from rubble. Civilians turned factories into arsenals, and children carried messages through sewers beneath his soldiers' feet. Kael'thar had seen mighty empires collapse with less resistance. Humanity bent under the hammer of conquest, but never broke. One evening, he stood at the edge of a battlefield. Smoke curled from the ruins, the stench of ash heavy in the air. A squad brought before him a prisoner. No soldier, but a child, barely 13. The boy's clothes were torn, his face streaked with doubt, yet his eyes burned with defiance. Caught sabotaging our supplies, the officer reported. Planting explosives. Kael'thar studied the boy. So small, so breakable. Yet when he asked, why resist, when surrender would spare you, the child spat at his feet. Because this is our world, the boy said, his voice steady despite trembling hands. And no matter how strong you are, you'll never own it. The words struck deeper than any weapon. Kael'thar dismissed the guards and ordered the child released. His officers were shocked, but he silenced them with a glare. Later that night, the general turned the words over in his mind again and again. You'll never own it. The boy had spoken with certainty, as if strength was not measured in weapons but in something invisible, something unshakable. As weeks passed, Kael'thar began to notice it everywhere. Human children playing in ruins. Families rebuilding houses while shells still fell. Soldiers singing before hopeless battles. Humanity refused despair. One day, a council of Veyran admirals summoned Kael'thar to account for the campaign's delays. In the vast hall of the fleet, his peers demanded answers. You promised swift conquest, one hissed, ridges quivering with anger. Instead, we face endless resistance. Why have you not broken them? Kael'thar rose to his full height, his crimson eyes burning. Because they cannot be broken. His voice echoed through the chamber. Their flesh is weak, yes. Their lives are short, yes. But their will is stronger than steel. Strike them down, and they rise again. Burn their cities, and they build in the ashes. Even their children carry the spirit of defiance. I have seen it with my own eyes. Humanity is not weak. They are the most dangerous adversaries we have ever faced. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some scoffed, dismissing his words as madness. But others listened in silence, sensing the truth in his conviction. For Kael'thar was not a being prone to exaggeration. When he returned to the warfront, something within him had shifted. He no longer looked at humans as prey, but as equals, rivals, even. He found himself lingering near settlements, watching the children. In their laughter, he saw echoes of something ancient, something the Veyrans had long forgotten. Joy amidst hardship, hope amidst despair. Then came the day that sealed his change forever. The Veyrans launched a massive offensive against a fortified human enclave. The battle raged for hours, cities trembling beneath bombardment. Kael'thar advanced with his troops, determined to crush the last resistance. But in the heart of the ruins, amid collapsed buildings and fire, he found not an army, but a group of children huddled together. They were protecting something, a wounded soldier, barely clinging to life. When Kael'thar's soldiers approached, the children stood in front of the soldier, arms spread wide. Their bodies shook with fear, but none moved aside. The smallest among them shouted, "You'll have to go through us first." Time seemed to freeze. Kael'thar stared at them, at their scraped knees, their bruised faces, their defiant eyes. Something inside him broke, the illusion of superiority, the arrogance of conquest. In those trembling figures, he saw the pure essence of humanity. Courage without reason, resilience without end. He raised a hand, stopping his soldiers. "Leave them." "But, General, leave them," Kael'thar repeated, his voice iron. The children watched in disbelief as the alien army withdrew. And Kael'thar, for the first time in centuries, felt the weight of humility. From that moment, his campaign faltered, not because his armies lost battles, but because his will to wage them crumbled. He began ordering retreats, staging stalemates, allowing humans to reclaim territory. His officers whispered of weakness, but he knew the truth. To fight these people was futile. For every victory would birth a dozen more resistances, every wound would harden them further, and every child would grow into a warrior stronger than the last. In time, Kael'thar returned to the Veyran High Council. He stood before the ruling lords of his empire and spoke words that stunned them into silence. End the war. Leave the humans be. They are not prey. They are not conquest. They are a storm, and no empire can cage a storm. The lords raged, but they could not ignore his authority, his record, his conviction. In the end, they relented. The fleets withdrew. Humanity remained free. Years passed. Kael'thar, now aged and weary, often found his thoughts wandering back to Earth. He remembered the boy who spat at his feet, the girl who laughed after scraping her knees, the children who stood in front of a dying soldier. He realized that their strength did not come from their bodies, but from something deeper, an unyielding spirit, a refusal to surrender, a fire that burned even in their youngest. And so, when younger Veyrans asked him why the campaign had failed, Kael'thar would answer with a low rumble. Humans are fragile in body, but indestructible in soul. I called them weak once. I was wrong. They are the strongest beings I have ever known. Remember this. Fear the laughter of human children. For if even they thrive on deathworlds, then no battlefield will ever break their kind. He would turn his gaze then toward the stars, toward the small blue world spinning quietly in the void, and wonder if perhaps the greatest lesson of his long life had been given to him not by generals, not by empires, but by the unshakable joy of children playing in the ruins of war.